Welcome back to Gabversity, where facts care not about our feelings. Lovely to see everybody again. And will we or will we not share this broadcast? I think maybe we can share it with VIP guests. Share with 98 people. I don't understand how this works. But there you go. That is life, true faith. So, this is according to Melitza Sada. Hello. This is and true faith and everyone. Here we are talking about a society close to home at the US. Okay, the Anasazi sites of Chaco Culture National Historical Park. Good morning, Boss Briggs, Melitza, Franzman, everyone. All right, lying in the US Southwest on the New Mexico State Highway 57 and near US Highway 666, respectively less than 600 miles from Los Angeles. Like the Maya cities that will be the subject of the next chapter, they and other ancient Native American ruins are popular tourist attractions that thousands of modern first world citizens visit each year. One of those former Western cultures, Mimbres, is also a favorite of art collectors because of its beautiful pottery decorated with geometrical patterns and realistic figures, a unique tradition created by a society numbering barely 4,000 people. That's pretty crazy, considering that it was only 4,000 people, and sustained at its peak for just a few generations before abruptly vanishing into smoke. STP, hello. All right, the US Southwestern societies operated on a much smaller scale than the Maya cities, with populations of thousands rather than millions. As a result, the Maya cities are far more extensive in area, have more lavish monuments and art, and are products of more steeply stratified societies, led by kings and possessed writing, whereas the Anasazi didn't. But the Anasazi did manage to construct in stone the largest and tallest buildings erected in North America prior to Chicago 1880s. So basically the Anasazi had the largest erection in America before the 1880s. Hello, Paint Something and Dr. Sexy. Even though the Anasazi lacked a writing system, such as the one that allows us to date Maya inscriptions to the exact day, we shall see that many US Southwestern structures, Deltron, can still be dated to within a year, right? Thereby enabling archaeologists to understand a society's history with much finer time resolution than is possible for the Easter Islands, for Pitcairn and Henderson Islands. All right, and this is, of course, absolutely vital to see how these type of societies can collapse, considering how successful they were, right? So, Proto-America in the Southwest, we are talking, hello my friend Alpha, we are talking about the Anasazi, which is a society that existed in the southern states of the modern US. And they vanished at one point, even though they were unbelievably successful and intelligent and creative, and we're trying to figure out why, according to these people who have studied it for generations. All right. The reason that our understanding as humans of Southwestern prehistory, as we call it, is detailed because of two advantages that archaeologists in this area enjoy. One, okay, is a method that we'll discuss below called the Packrat method. Let me check if I have missed a page. I have missed a page, I'm sorry. Which state specifically does it state? It will, yes. There'll be a map that I will show you. It might not be in this lecture, but this is a multi-part series that we're going to talk about the Anasazi. You DM on Twitter. You can definitely DM me. Some people say they can't, but if you tweet me, I'll tweet you back. Or you can message me on Facebook at Gabsmacked. In the US Southwest, we are dealing with not just a single culture and collapse. I know why they vanished, bitches. But with a whole series of them. And the map is on page 142, which we'll get to. Southwestern cultures that underwent regional collapses, drastic reorganizations, or abandonments at different locations and at different times include the Mimbres at about AD 1130. We had the Chaco Canyon, the North Black Mesa, and the Virgin Anasazi in the middle or late 12th century. So around 1300, Mesa Verde, and what's that, middle green or half green, and the Kayenta Anasazi the Mogollon around 1400, and possibly as late as the 15th century, the Hohokam. Hohokam, well known for its elaborate system of irrigation agriculture. So they had advanced agricultural systems and irrigation systems. It's quite fantastic to see this. You know, most of the time we talk about European history, but this stuff is quite brilliant. What do we got here? Okay. While all of those sharp transitions occurred before, this is the interesting thing. A lot of these tea or coffee, Gab. Today I've already had my coffee, and I've got to go to the dentist soon. And then after that, they might let me drink some tea. We'll see how we go. All right. So, what's interesting is that these cultures died before Columbus appeared. And that's quite interesting, okay? Because he didn't arrive in the New World until 1492. And all of this was happening before that, right? The Anasazi did not vanish as people, right? Other southwestern Native American societies incorporating some of their descendants persist to this day, such as the Hopi and Zuni pueblos. Okay, what accounts for all of these declines or abrupt changes in so many neighboring societies? It's quite interesting. So there was something that happened, some collective event, which decimated, rearranged, and wiped out these societies before the US even showed up. All right, so the first thing that people want to do, as we do as humans, is look for a single factor explanation. We do that all the time. Oh, you know, America's declining because of this, because of that. There you go. Exactly. What did we just say? Single factor explanations, and then someone comes out with a single factor explanation, which is exactly what humans do, because our brains aren't, I guess, primed to realize that there's always more than one factor. All right, so favorite single factor explanations invoke environmental damage, drought, or warfare and cannibalism. Actually, the field of US Southwestern prehistory is a graveyard for single factor explanations. Multiple factors have operated, but they all go back to the fundamental problem that the US Southwest is a fragile and marginal environment for agriculture. Oh, God. Okay. As is also much of the world today, it has low and unpredictable rainfall, quickly exhausted soils, and very low rates of forest regrowth. We wasn't cannibles. Okay. Environmental problems, especially major droughts and episodes of streamed erosion, tend to recur at intervals much longer than a human lifetime or oral memory span. Given those severe difficulties, it's impressive that Native Americans in the Southwest developed such complex farming societies as they did. What the fuck's wrong with this loser? Alright, so what's interesting here is that even without writing and without recorded history, the Native Americans from this area were able to develop complex farming societies, which is quite amazing, more than we can suggest for this moron. Testimony to their success is that most of this area today supports a much sparser population growing their own food than it did in Anasazi times. That's actually quite amazing. So the Anasazi times, the people there were actually they were actually more successful than the people living there today. And the people living there today, right, are mostly non-Native American. And yet the Native Americans back then were able to sustain a much higher population than the people today, which is quite a testament to those people. It was a moving and unforgettable experience while I was driving through areas of desert dotted with the remains of former Anasazi stone houses, dams, irrigation systems, to see how a virtually empty landscape with just the occasional occupied house. It's quite amazing. So these are the things that we don't celebrate, right? That we haven't learnt from. Where natives so-called Negroes. Well, look, these natives were a lot smarter than you, so I don't think you are their descendant, that's for sure. Yes, I wonder if it was because they lived off the land. Well, so they had typos, maybe, or maybe your brain is malfunctioning. These guys were quite amazing, and according to their irrigation systems, what's interesting about it what's quite interesting is that despite not having written history, right, and thereby written engineering plans, they were able to develop an irrigation system. Actually, no, the irrigation system was actually, it arose out of nature as opposed to because of it, which is a very good point, actually. And that's quite fascinating, and that's something we need to celebrate, that we as humans today who have recorded history in America are still not even smart enough to be able to have developed an irrigation system to support as much life as the Anasazis were able to do back then, before Europeans were able to make it to America. So that's actually an amazing thing. So this comes back to the handout as opposed to hand up. Clearly, there were people way more intelligent than us living there. And that's something to be admired. The Anasazi collapse and other southwestern collapses offer us not only a gripping story, but also an instructive one for the book. See, this is important. This is really important, Kevro. I'll tell you why. Had the first irrigation system or no? They did, yes, they did. But they did because they were able to, before the Babylonians were the Sumerians who were able to develop the wheel and recorded writing, and were able to dam up and master the Tigris and the Euphrates, which flowed a lot stronger back then. That's a completely different scenario. Yeah. What's interesting about the scenario here in the southwestern states is that they did not have the privilege of recorded history, of writing, or the wheel, and yet were able to make an irrigation system. Yeah. So it's I mean, as brilliant as the Sumerians were, obviously, these guys had less technology and did a better job. Which I find fascinating. But here is the real fascinating thing. The fascinating thing I find is that in spite of their brilliance, they still collapsed. So what does that say about Americans today? If they can collapse, then Americans can certainly collapse again. And this is one of the reasons I love to study this stuff, so that we can learn from our mistakes, right? And from other people's mistakes. Okay. So the complexities of non-self-sufficient societies dependent on imports and exports, and societies collapsing swiftly after attaining peak population numbers and power. So very, very interesting stuff. Okay. So the developments of archaeology, right, has allowed us as humans to reconstruct changes in local vegetation. It's just insane that they can figure out the differences in local vegetation back then. Okay, they can also date building sites to the nearest year by the tree rings of the site's wood construction beams, instead of having to rely on the radiocarbon method used by archaeologists elsewhere, with its inevitable errors of 50 to 100 years. That's quite insane. So because of their technology, yeah, you can cut into the houses and then look at the tree rings. The tree ring method depends on the fact that rainfall and temperature vary seasonally in the southwest, so that tree growth rates also vary seasonally. So you can actually map the seasons via the tree rings. It's just fascinating. Hey, God's dead is back. As true and temperate zones as well. Hence, temperate zone trees lay down new wood and annual growth rings. Hey, hey, hey. Where is Pompous? Where are you? I'm over here. Where? Over here. I don't know where he is. Hence, temperate zone trees lay down new wood and annual growth rings, unlike tropical rainforest trees whose growth is nearly continuous. Interesting. So because they were in the southwestern states of America, they were not yet in the tropical zone. And the tropical zone would actually allow trees to continuously grow. Whereas in the southwest, because of the varying seasons, then the trees would have growth spurts. And that way you could track the seasons and the dates and the years. Phenomenal stuff. All hail the timekeepers. Alright. The dry climate results in excellent preservation of wooden beams from trees felled over 1,000 years ago. That's pretty cool too, because it's so dry there, they could preserve that stuff. Okay. This is called dendrochronology, which comes from dendron, which is the ancient Greek for tree, and chronos, which is time. So, tree time. Hey, it's tree time. If you cut down a tree today, right, it's straightforward to count the rings inwards, starting from the tree's outside, and thereby to state that the 177th ring from the outermost one towards the center was laid down in the year 2005 minus 177, or 1828. Phenomenal. You learned about this stuff in high school. Must have had a good high school. That's more than what most people know. but it's less straightforward to attach a date to a particular ring in the ancient Anasazi wooden beam. It is beautiful, huh? Yeah. I wish I could learn everything about everything, man. You took science courses, pretty cool. Because at first you don't know in what year the beam was cut. And secondly, the widths of tree growth rings vary from year to year as well. So depending on rain or drought or conditions. Hence the sequence of rings is like a message in the Morse code formerly used for sending telegraph messages, ... You learned about tree rings in Girl Scouts, hey, hey. In the Morse code, wide, wide, narrow, narrow in the string. So that's actually quite amazing. So you have to adjust the ring size for the seasons throughout history. Dendrology in college. Amazing. So you guys are all more advanced than me if that's the case. So actually, right, the ring sequence is even more diagnostic and richer in information than the Morse code, because trees actually contain rings spanning many different widths rather than the Morse code's choice between only a dot or a dash. That's quite phenomenal. That's quite phenomenal. So instead of just having dots and dashes, they've got tree widths, ring widths, so ring, medium, wide, long, short, thick, skinny. Sorry, everything comes back to dirty jokes. Tree ring specialists, known as dendrochronologists. Wow, that's unique and original. I did not see that coming. Proceed by noting the sequence of wider and narrower rings in a tree cut down in a known recent year, and also noting the sequence in beams from trees cut down at various unknown times in the past. So process of elimination. They then match up and align ring sequences with the same diagnostic wide, narrow patterns from different beams. Okay. All right. So for example, suppose it's 2005. You cut down a tree that proves to be 400 rings and therefore 400 years old. And that has an especially distinctive sequence of 5 wide rings, 2 narrow rings, and 6 wide rings for the 13 years from 1643 to 1631. That stuff is fascinating. If you find that same distinctive sequence starting 7 years from the outermost ring in an old beam of unknown felling date with 332 rings, then, well, that's just mathematics. Then, Lilibel, you can conclude, I want to interview you, Lilibel. You can conclude that the old beam came from a tree cut down in 1650, 7 years earlier than 1643, and that the tree began to grow in the year 1318. Their high school group plants and such. I love this stuff, man. That's awesome. I like you even more now, my friend. 332 years before 1650, 1318. Crazy stuff. You then go on to align that beam because God... No, that was a joke. Because tree living between 1318 and 1650 with even older beams, you can simply try to match up treeing patterns. Comes from a tree cut down after 1318 but downgrown before 13. All right, so basically you can match one tree to another one that you know of and then use the new tree to match other trees, which is pretty damn awesome. Extending your tree ring record further back into the past. Hey, hey, Dr. Sexy. That's why we are all the Gab family, my friends. In that way, dendrochronologists have constructed tree ring records extending back for thousands of years in some part of the world. That's just crazy. Back when all of us were swinging from trees. Such record is valid for a geographic area. Aquaponics sometimes, it's the future. I think we will do so, my friend. You should send me some stuff at Gabsmacked if you want, or Twitter to Gabversity, and we'll definitely go through it. Weather, hence tree growth patterns vary in location. So you can use it to also find varying weather patterns in different locations. For instance, the basic tree ring chronology of the American Southwest applies to the area from northern Mexico to Wyoming. And someone asked me earlier, let's see if they're still here, they asked me, where is this, which areas are these from? To answer your question, it's northern Mexico to Wyoming. What was the Anasazi, or should I listen from the beginning? Yes, listen from the beginning. But the Anasazi were a group of genius Native Americans who developed technologies more advanced than what we have in the southwest of the US today. And they didn't have writing either. They were able to do it. A bonus of dendrochronology is that the width and substructure of each ring reflect the amount of rain and season, James Joseph, at which the rain fell during that particular year. Thus, tree ring studies, we're studying your ancestors, James Joseph, allow one to reconstruct past climate. A series of wide rings means a wet period, hey hey, and a series of narrow rings means a drought. Tree rings thereby provide southwestern archaeologists with uniquely exact dating and uniquely dated environmental illustration. What's amazing is that you can use the tree rings to discover how advanced the irrigation systems became and try to find a correlation between the advanced irrigation systems of the Anasazi and the relative drought or wet periods. That would be phenomenal. The first humans to reach the Americas, living as hunter-gatherers, arrived in the southwest by 11,000 BC. But possibly earlier. Here we go. This is exactly what I was saying. They lived between northern Mexico to Wyoming, these people. But these people were not the original Americans. A lot of Americans think that they were the original Americans. No, they wiped out the Aboriginals who survived in Australia, but were wiped out in America. And there were 2 left as of 10 years ago living in Uruguay. So there you go. The Native Americans actually wiped out the original Americans, yeah. So it's phenomenal that a lot of people don't know that. A unique story that is special to each tree. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's like each tree has written a book. It's so cool. Awkward Indians. The thing that I think is the most unreported discussion about Native Americans in this region is their ability to have developed the best irrigation system that the Southwest has seen in history without the ability to write. That to me is the best untold story so far. And if people were to tell that story, can you say that again? Which part? The part about we're so badass. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing. And if we don't teach that, right, then to me it's absolutely disrespectful to be patronizing with the railroads in the US. Yeah. I think it's disrespectful to be patronizing and say we need to give them money or to me it's like no. These people had better technology than we do. The first people in America killed the real natives. Yes, the Native Americans, what we call the Native Americans, actually killed or maybe not deliberately, but they outperformed the original natives. Yes. They died in America, Aboriginals in US before Indians. Absolutely. If anyone's on the computer, email me and I will send you the reference before I forget. Knots in rope and yarn being a language. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely send you the references. And 2 of them were still alive. Actually, as I said in the documentary that I saw, 2 of them were still alive in Uruguay. Old Indian territory. You do. Kevro is you'd be an awesome freaking land scientist, man. Seriously, your love of nature and your knowledge of it just be a perfect combination. This is what all of Wisconsin is, old Indian territory. This is the stuff that saves civilization. This understanding and learning and respecting. What did they look like? They look like Australian Aboriginals, exactly. They were the same people. So the ancestors of many of the Pacific Islands, the Australian Aboriginals, the Torres Strait Islanders, Cook Islands. These people were the ancestors, the original Americans. There's also a reference to them in old Maronite books, like our ancestors, our Phoenician ancestors who got to America in 10,000 BC. And they were referred to as blue-eyed gods and stuff. But I don't trust that one. That one I don't trust because that hail Trump. So you're a follower as opposed to a leader. That's great. Well done. Maybe you can grow your own testicles one day. You're 100% right, Gab. All right. So agriculture did not develop indigenously in the US Southwest because of a live in Canada to Native Indians. Yeah. Well, what happened was when the Ice Age, our priest said something about this. Yeah. Well, when the Ice Age started to recede, but it didn't recede completely. No, you hate Trump. Well, I don't hate Trump and I don't like Trump. We're just talk facts on this channel, but no worries. Welcome aboard. They moved out of northern China, Mongolia, and moved across into Russia and then southwards. And as they did, they left trails of ancestry all the way down, which was pretty cool. But as they went into the US, yeah, they killed the native Aboriginals. But the Aboriginals actually got there by boat, which is very fascinating. That they were able to travel by boat from Like they went from Africa into Asia, and then from there went by boat to the US. Supposedly, some of them argue that they went from Africa the other way to the US, but I don't see that crossing the Atlantic from Africa. I don't know. You aren't on your balcony? Oh, I am. Yeah, here's my balcony. All right. Here's interesting, right? Here's something interesting. The first humans, right? As we say, it says here, the peoples ancestral to modern Native Americans. Agriculture did not develop indigenously in the US Southwest because of a paucity of domesticable wild plant animal species. Instead, it arrived from Mexico. Now that would actually make sense. Have you watched Kon-Tiki? I haven't. You look different. Sorry, don't be sorry, my dear. It's great that I can change the scene a bit. Okay. Instead, it arrived from Mexico, where corn, squash, beans, and many other crops were domesticated. Corn arriving by 2000 BC. Squash around 800 BC. Beans. That's fascinating. Here we go again. Necessity, the mother of invention. Maize. So we have these Native Americans called the Anasazi, right? Now, they don't have these vegetables yet, but they get these vegetables from their southern counterparts, but they can't grow them naturally because of the dry climate in the Southwest. So what do? They are problem solvers, and they develop the most advanced irrigation system we've seen in human history. Now tell me that's not effing amazing that they're able to do that. That is celebration of humanity right there, my friends. All right. People also kept domestic turkeys, about which there was some debate whether they were domesticated in Mexico or not, or in the Southwest, or vice versa. So that one we don't know. That's the same as bulls. We don't know if bulls went to Spain from the Middle East or came to the Middle East from Spain. We don't know. It's the same here with turkey, or whether they're domesticated. Originally, what have I done here? Next page. Sorry. Gab, do you believe in Obama? Michelle is a man. I honestly don't really have enough to comment on that. It depends on who I want to trigger. That's all it's about. Turkey in Spanish is pavo. How are you? That looks like a bot. Hey, Melitza Sada just gave me some sort of awesome star. Thank you. Melitza. Everyone, Melitza is awesome. I've spoken to her personally. She is gorgeous, and I wish you all the best with your family. Southwestern Native Americans just incorporated some agriculture as part of their hunter-gatherer lifestyle, as did the modern Apache in the 18th and 19th centuries. Apache settled down to plant and harvest crops during the growing season. Super hard. Oh, cool. Super hearts. Hey, from a super girl. Then moved around as hunter-gatherers during the rest of the year. Okay, that's quite interesting. So the Apache actually were semi-agriculture. Likewise, by AD 1, some Southwestern Native Americans had already taken up residence in villages and become primarily dependent on agriculture with ditch irrigation. So that's interesting. So before they settled as agriculturalists, they were semi-agriculturalists, where they were nomadic for most of the year, and then part of the year they took a break and became agriculturalists. So it's like getting into a bath slowly. Once you get your luggage in, then it's all right. Thereafter, their populations exploded. Oh, anytime, my dear. I love hearing from you. Absolutely love hearing from you. Their populations exploded in numbers and spread over the landscape until the retrenchments beginning around 1117 AD. See, that's interesting. What's interesting is that the original West in the modern day Middle East died in about 1186 BC. These guys died in about 1200 AD, and that was still before Europeans came. So that's a very interesting concept. So we can't blame everything on the Europeans, which is brilliant information. This is what I mean about facts. At least 3 alternative types of agriculture emerged, all involving different solutions to the Southwest fundamental problem. How to obtain enough water to grow crops in an environment most of which has rainfall so low and unpredictable that little or no farming is practiced there today. You can't tell me that that's freaky. That stuff freaks me out. It freaks me out that these people, before anything, right, when we in Europe were developing crusades in response to the maniacs in the Middle East, these guys were thinking about how to create irrigation in the desert. That stuff blows my mind. One of the 3 solutions, I think I have to go soon. Yeah, I have to go in a couple of minutes, so we might finish this lecture at another date. How to obtain enough water to grow crops. One of the 3 solutions considers so-called dry land agriculture. So we'll probably talk about these in the next lecture. So in the next lecture, we'll talk about the 3 alternative types of agriculture that emerged as solutions by the Anasazi. Come on after the dentist. Yeah, I might do that. So the first solution, which we'll talk about, is called dry land agriculture. The second solution was to do with water tables. Ooh, I can see a problem with water table extraction. And the third solution was water runoff. All right, we'll talk about them in the next lecture. As always, Gabversity. Facts give no shits about your feelings, about my feelings, about anyone's feelings. Before the Aztecs in Mexico. Also an awesome fact. Hugs, y'all. Lilabelle, hugs right back to you.